Okay, so thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it. And this is going to be kind of quick. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Did a PowerPoint presentation. And of course, this is going over how to build wealth through your real estate assets. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and see if I can get this to work. This is always the hardest part. I think I got it. Share. So you should be able to see, it should say Atlantic Coast Mortgage. On your screen, okay, I saw the thumbs up, great. Okay. All right. So here we go, as the curtain opens. So how to build wealth through your home's equity. All right, and so what is home equity? So equity is the amount of value that you have in your home. It includes the appreciation that you gain, and then you're going to subtract out any mortgages or liens on the property. So if you had a first and second mortgage or just one mortgage, you're going to subtract that out, and whatever's left is the home equity that you have in the home. So just an example, if you had a house that was worth $500,000 and your outstanding mortgage was $350,000, then your home equity amount would be $150,000, which would be pretty significant. Equity builds over time. The only time we've ever had negative appreciation was the housing boom, or I'm sorry, the housing bust after 2008. But the last few years, as you know, the housing market has appreciated insanely, like 15 to 20%, which is just not normal. Which is why the house prices have gone up so much, and why everybody right now has a ton of equity in their homes, especially if you bought 4 or 5 years ago. You've made a lot of money as far as your equity goes. Again, real estate, it rarely depreciates, and it's one of the safest assets to grow. So you can basically count on it increasing over time. So there's some different ways that you can use your equity to invest, and the whole point of this is to tell you some different ways that you can use that equity to be able to make money and to build wealth. So when you have equity in your house, it's just kind of sitting there. It's not doing anything for you. The only time you really realize it is when you go to sell your house. So this is showing some ways of how to use your equity while you're living there and actually making it work for you. Everybody's goal, it always seems to be, they just want to pay their house off so they won't have a mortgage payment. But why not have a mortgage payment and be able to use your equity to help you build your wealth, so that when it is time to retire, you're way ahead of the game than you would have been just making your payments as normal. So one of the ways you can do this is to consolidate debt, and then you take your savings that you earn from that and you invest it. So for example, if you had a balance of 300,000 and you had a rate of 3.5%, which was probably somewhere around there over the last few years until last year, and you had a principal and interest payment of $1,347. If you took $50,000 to consolidate that debt, and so you basically would refinance your current mortgage, you'd wrap that debt in, and then of course you're going to have some closing costs. So I called it about $6,000. And let's say out of that 50K in debt, that the payments total are about $2,000 a month, which normally on $50,000, it's going to be somewhere right around there. I went online and I researched this, and at a minimum, it would take 20 years to pay that off if you owed that much. Your total cash outlay per month would be estimated right at $33.47. So if you took all of that, wrapped it in, at a 5%, and I'm using 5% because the rates have gone up right now, and I would advise anyone, if you're going to go up in rate, I would not go up above 5%. So you'd be waiting a little bit, but the rates are going to come back down, and it's been suggested that probably at some point next year they'll probably be back in the 4s. But for right now, let's just say you were going to do this consolidation at 5%. Your total estimated PITI payment or principal and interest payment, I'm sorry, would be at 1916. These are actual numbers that I went online and used mortgage calculators. You would save $1,431 a month. So that equates to $17,172 a year, or $171,720. That is amazing. And I just did it over 10 years because even though it said it would take 20 years to pay off, I just wanted to show you at 10 because, you know, the chances of being in that house that long are probably slim to none. So you get that kind of savings, and we're going to do something with it. But the other way you can use your assets in your house, of course, is to purchase investment property. And as Warren Buffett always says, the fastest way to wealth is through real estate. And it's true. I myself bought a second home last year at the beach down in Corolla in the Outer Banks. And in 1.5 years' time, it's already appreciated $120,000, which is insanity. Now, part of that, again, is an anomaly because of what's happened in the market, but the Outer Banks generally keeps its value because it's such a destination, a highly sought destination, and people want to buy beach houses out there. So that was a great investment for me. But what you can do, and one of the things I always advise if anybody wants to get into investments, is to first off turn your current home into an investment property and purchase a new primary residence. Now, obviously, moving is no fun, but this is the cheapest way to do it with the least amount of money out of your pocket. So if you turn your current home into investment property, it's going to have the mortgage on it is going to probably be a very low rate. So you're going to have cash flow from that rental. And then when you purchase a primary residence, you're going to be able to buy that with 5% down. So you're not going to have to take a lot of money out of your pocket to be able to do that. And also you're going to get a much better rate buying a primary residence than an investment property. What you can do is, let's say you decide you don't want to do that, you don't want to move, but you do want to buy an investment property. So you can use that current equity that you have in your house to take money out to buy that investment property. And it all depends on the rates. But one of the things that I usually advise is if you can get a really good rate, a home equity line of credit is really good because you're not taking that whole balance that you have on your current mortgage and refinancing that mortgage into an investment property mortgage, which the rates are much higher. So you're retaining that low rate on your primary and then being able to use the equity with a home equity line to put down for the investment property. Now, down payment on investment property is 20 to 25%. But I always advise if you can afford the 25%, the rates are much better and it's much cheaper to be able to put 25% down. Now, one cool thing is when you buy an investment property, they only count 25% of the mortgage payment against you. And the reason is they factor in the fact that you're buying it as an investment, you're going to be renting it out. So they will get the appraiser to do rental market rent schedules, and whatever that market rent is for a house similar to what you're purchasing, they will give you 75% of that market rent as income. So you're really only getting hit with 25% of that mortgage. So it makes it a lot easier to qualify than it would be to do the opposite of purchasing the primary. And this is to show you the appreciation. So generally it's 3% a year. So if you purchased a $350,000 home, the appreciation in 10 years would be $105,000. That's pretty awesome. So you keep that home, you go to sell it in 10 years, you're going to make 105 less your commissions. That's a pretty darn good investment. If you took, let's say you put 25,000 down, if you took 25,000 at an 8% ROI over 10 years, you're going to make probably a fifth of what you would in this kind of investment. So you get a lot more money for your investments as well. So some other ways to build wealth, and that's through your investment property cash flow. So let's say you have a $2,000 mortgage payment and you're going to rent the house out for $2,500. You have an average return on investment of 8% in 10 years. You'd have a cash flow of $500 a month or $6,000 a year. Check this out. Your ending balance after 10 years with the appreciation, the ROI, you would have $103,015. That's a pretty darn good ROI on that. And that is where you would take that $500. And it, like, again, it doesn't seem like it's a lot, but you deposit that into a mutual fund or a CD or an annuity. If you get that 8% return, which is normal, the last year has not been normal, but you saw what happened a few years back when we had a different president in the White House. Our 401ks and any kind of investments went through the roof. So the normal is 8%. Sometimes you may get a little more, sometimes you may get a little less, but taking that investment property cash flow and putting it into investments, look at that in 10 years, 103,000. That's amazing. So what can you do with that? Well, this is how you develop a map for an empire to build wealth through your asset. So you've got your primary residence. We said that you can do a cash out debt consolidation to invest those savings, right? So that's one way. So let's say you did that and you used that example I gave earlier where you took the $50,000 to pay off the credit cards, you had all that extra money that you're saving and you were taking that and investing it. You'd have that money set aside, or now if you decide, hey, you know what, let's go ahead and sell our primary residence and let's turn it into an investment property and then buy our new residence as a primary. Remember, you're going to be keeping that great rate on your investment property because you're turning it from a primary into the investment, and you're now buying a new property with minimal money down, 5%. You now own two properties. Now you've got your two properties. You can use that cash flow from your investment property, like we said, start putting into an annuity or CD or anything that can be withdrawn at a later date. So you're going to be able to withdraw that money if you want to buy another investment property. So hence we have the next, use your equity from your annuity or your CD and the appreciation in your new primary residence to use for a down payment of another second home, which is 10% down, or an investment property, 20% or the 25%. So it's not going to happen immediately. You're probably looking at maybe 5 years. But, you know, in 5 years, you'll now have 3 homes just through this. And you're literally using everything started from your home's assets, your home equity. So you're really not using any money out of your pocket. Then we go another, let's say another 4 or 5 years. Now you can invest that cash flow from the second home and buy another investment property. And if you wanted to, you could do the same thing again. If you didn't mind moving again, of using that equity in your primary residence to buy that new primary residence and then keeping that home you were just in as an investment property. Now you've got 4 homes. So within 10 years, you literally could have 4 homes. And here's the great part. When you're for retirement age, let's just say you decide you just want to keep your house and you're ready to sell the rest of the homes, you're going to have major profit. And your investment income from your cash flow from all the savings and rent will be over $800,000. And I use a calculator to figure that out. So if you total that with the retirement, you'd have over $1 million from your profits and all of that cash flow that you were putting aside that was getting that ROI of the $103,000 for each different house. So you'd say probably in 20 or 30 years when you do retire, you'll have over $1 million plus whatever you have in your 401k, pension savings, and you'll still have your primary residence, which of course you can leave that behind a family. Or if you're over 62 and you have 50% equity, at that point you could do a reverse mortgage which means you would not have a payment the rest of your life and the interest would just go on the back end. And you can live your days free with all this money in the bank, all these investments, and not have a mortgage payment. That sounds pretty good to me, right? Of course, there's my information. So, which I know you have. So I am going to stop our screen share. Told you it'd be short and sweet. Now we're back here and you can unmute yourselves if you have any questions you want to ask. I know, Angie, I know you said you have a bunch of questions, so let me know what you got.
Well, actually, I have one question on one of your slides. So when, like, we just bought a house for cash out by Lake Anna,
Right.
and we were debating whether we wanted to put a renter in it and do basically a cash out refinance, or if we were just going to fix it up and sell it. In one of your slides you said that I think you said if we were to put a renter in it, would 25% of that cash out refinance count against my debt to income?
So you're saying, so you did a cash out refinance, would that mortgage payment count against your debt to income?
Yeah, I think one of the slides said something about 25% of it would,
Okay,
or was that in reference to something else?
That was if you're purchasing an investment property.
Okay.
If you put a renter in, as long as you have a lease and a security deposit, then the exact same thing. You would get credit for 75% of that rental income. So yes, 25% of that, whatever that mortgage payment would be from your cash out refinance would only go against you as your debt to income.
Okay.
So yeah,
So
it would not count as a lot of money towards your debt to income.
Okay. So, but right now I'm kind of at the max because similar to you, we bought a house down in Rodanthe, a little further south.
Sure.
So right now the banks look at it as I am paying that mortgage and I'm paying the mortgage of our current home.
Right.
So my debt to income at this point, especially because we did a refinance, a HELOC, and pulled that equity from our primary residence. So my debt to income is like at its max right now. So if we did decide to put somebody in it, that 25% would probably, until I get that Rodanthe house off of my debt to income, that would probably push me over the edge anyway, even as small as it is.
And it depends on like you had mentioned, I think you had mentioned the cash out refinance. So with a cash out refinance, if you use some of that to pay off debts, then it might be able to get you under too.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, kind of all depends. And of course, I would be more than happy to work that up for you if you wanted to. There's just so many factors. But it sounds like you're almost following the plan without even knowing the plan.
Right. And that's we're sitting here watching. I was like, okay, check, we've done that. Check, we've done that. And our goal is to eventually, lease our current home and purchase another home locally. But with that HELOC that we did, we have to stay in our house for a year, was part of the conditions of the HELOC that we did.
Got it.
Yeah.
And really the whole thing with, the keeping the current house and then purchasing another house and moving, it's an inconvenience, but if you can put up with that, or if you just did it like, every 4 or 5 years where it's not too bad, you really can add to your portfolio, and I have a young couple right now that's what they're doing. And it's really exciting to see that they started off with a townhome and they did that. They got a home equity line of credit on their townhome and they owned it for about 4 years. They ended up moving out and renting it out. And then they used that money from their equity line to buy their next primary residence. And they're in that. And then they actually moved out, believe it or not, and rented an apartment that's even less than what their mortgage payment was. And now they're renting that house out. So they're going to do that for like a year or two, and then they're going to buy their next house as a primary. So, it's kind of cool how they're doing that. And I'm watching their I'm watching their wealth build and they're not even 30 years old yet. So,
Yeah, that's awesome.
and and I'm kicking myself that I didn't do this earlier because, I bought a beach house last year, like I said, and now I'm starting to look at other properties and I'm like, man, why did I not start doing this like 15, 20 years ago?
Right. Yep. Yep. Don't know what you don't know, right?
Well, true. And one of the other things, that I get asked a lot is I'll have clients reach out and they'll say, hey, we're thinking about refinancing down to a 15